All right, everyone, get ready because we are diving headfirst into a Supreme Court of Canada case today. Barendregt v. Grebliunas. It's a 2022 case, and if you've ever wondered how parental relocation disputes actually work after a separation, well, you're about to find out. We've got excerpts from the actual court decision, so we're going right to the source to see how the highest court in the country tackles these really intense situations.
Yeah.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Supreme Court. Sounds a little dry. But believe me, this case has it all. We're talking family drama, a house that sounds like a never-ending construction project, even a nude selfie gone wrong. Seriously. But it's not all salacious details. This case grapples with a question that goes way beyond just this one family. How do courts balance the right of a parent to decide where they want to live with what's actually best for the child who's stuck in the middle of all of it? To help us break it all down, I've got, well, he's a pro at taking this legal mumbo-jumbo and making it make sense. It's expert speaker, ready to get into it.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So we've got Ashley and Jeff, married, living in Kelowna, 2 young boys, the whole 9 yards. But of course, the relationship falls apart, things get messy. Ashley ends up taking the kids back to be with her family in Telkwa, and bam, just like that, we've got ourselves a legal battle over where these kids should actually call home.
And this is where it gets really interesting because the whole case basically comes down to this idea of fresh versus new evidence.
Okay, so break that down for me.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, it sounds kind of simple, but something tells me it's anything but.
You're telling me. So fresh evidence, that's kind of like, you know when you're doing a puzzle and you find that one missing piece you've been searching for, it existed the whole time, just wasn't available during that first trial. Like maybe a document got lost or someone discovers a new witness or something like that. But new evidence, that's different. That's information that pops up after the trial is already done and over with.
Right.
Say someone's financial situation changes drastically or some new info comes out that makes everyone question if the first decision was even the right one.
Got it. So in this case, we have Jeff. And during that initial trial, he was struggling financially big time. I mean, his house was basically unlivable, exposed wiring, mold, you name it. He was working on it. He's a carpenter. But the progress was slow. Money was tight. It was a whole thing.
Exactly. And the judge knew all of that. And on top of that, there was also evidence that Ashley, well, she had a really solid support network in Telkwa. Parents, siblings, a real sense of community. And that kind of support, that can make a world of difference when you're raising kids, especially after a tough separation like this one.
So it sounds like the judge was really trying to put together a clear picture of what life would look like for these kids, good and bad.
Exactly. The judge had to figure out where these kids would not only be physically safe, which is obviously the top priority, but also where they would be emotionally supported, where they'd have the best chance to thrive. And in this case, the judge decided that, you know what, Telkwa, with Ashley's family there and that built-in support system, that was the better option. So he granted Ashley primary custody and allowed her to relocate with the kids.
Okay, so far so good, right? Makes sense.
Oh, but we're just getting started because just when you think things are settled, Jeff comes back with this new evidence, throws a real wrench in the works. Remember those financial troubles hanging over Jeff's head during that first trial? Well, get this. Just as his appeal is about to wrap up, his lawyer drops a bombshell. Jeff's finances. Completely turned around.
Whoa, hold on. Did he win the lottery or something? Find a buried treasure chest. What happened?
Not quite. But he got his act together, bought out Ashley's share of that infamous house, got his own parents involved to help secure financing, made serious progress on all those renovations. I mean, we're talking a complete transformation almost overnight. So now he's coming back swinging, saying, hey, that original decision, the one that sent my kids away, it was based on this idea that I wasn't financially stable. But guess what? That's not true anymore.
We'll talk about a plot twist. Suddenly he's presenting this image of stability that wasn't there before.
Exactly. And it throws everything into question because now we have to figure out, did he intentionally present a weaker case the first time around? Or was this a genuine change in circumstances, something the court should actually consider?
And that's where this whole fresh versus new evidence thing gets really tricky, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if the court allows new evidence about stuff that happened after they already made a decision, wouldn't that basically open the floodgates for people to appeal every little thing and try to get a do-over? Where do you even draw the line?
It's a tough one because you want to make sure things are fair, right? You want to give everyone a chance to present all the important information. But at the same time, you've got to have some finality, some point where it's like, okay, this is the decision, we're sticking with it, especially in family law cases where dragging things out just adds more stress and uncertainty for everyone, especially the kids.
Exactly. And that's where the Supreme Court, they really dug into this idea of due diligence. They were basically saying it's not enough to just show up with some new information and be like, all right, time for a do-over. It's more like, could Jeff have gotten his finances in order earlier if he'd really put his nose to the grindstone?
So it's not just about if the information is new. It's about whether he could have found it all along if he'd put in the effort. That makes sense. You can't just breeze through the first trial and then try to rewrite the whole script later because you didn't do your homework.
Exactly right. And in this case, the Supreme Court ended up agreeing with Ashley, and they upheld the original decision to let her move to Telqua. So they weren't convinced that Jeff, just because his situation had changed, that they should overturn the first ruling.
Right. It's like they were trying to set a precedent. Like, you have to bring your A game right from the beginning.
Yeah.
You can't just expect a second chance because you weren't prepared the first time. And that, I think, that protects the whole legal process, No endless appeals. Make sure that decisions, once they're made, they have some weight to them.
Yeah, I could see that. It makes sense that me constantly going back and forth, changing things up, that just creates more chaos and uncertainty, especially with kids involved. You want them to have some stability.
Absolutely. But here's where things get even more interesting. The Supreme Court, they made it clear, like family law, it's different. It's not like a business deal or a contract where it's just, okay, we're done, see ya. Custody, access to the kids, that kind of thing. It's not always a one-and-done situation. Kids grow up, situations change, people change.
Right, so just because they upheld this relocation order, it doesn't mean Jeff is totally cut out of his kids' lives.
Exactly. It's not like that door is slammed shut forever. The Supreme Court, they acknowledged that if things were to change dramatically again, like if something happened that impacted what was best for the kids, well, Jeff could always go back to court and try to change the custody arrangements later on.
Okay, so it's a balancing act then. You don't want people to be able to drag things out forever with every little change.
Yeah.
But you also have to be realistic that life throws curveballs, especially in family situations.
You got it. But even though Jeff's improved financial situation wasn't enough to reverse the relocation in this case, it did bring up another fascinating legal concept: maximum contact.
Right. I remember that from the decision, it basically means trying to make sure that the kids have as much time with both parents as possible, even after a separation, right? But like, how does that even work when one parent wants to move hundreds of miles away? How do you have maximum contact then? It seems almost impossible.
Oh, you've hit the nail on the head. That is the big question in a lot of these relocation cases. The Supreme Court, they actually used this case to clarify how that whole maximum contact principle should work, what it really means. They basically said that while spending time with both parents is definitely important, it's not the only thing that matters. The ultimate goal, the thing that trumps everything else, is always, always the best interests of the child.
So it's not just about quantity, how much time the kids spend with each parent, but the quality of those interactions. That makes a difference.
100%. And in this particular case, remember, the first judge who heard the case, he had expressed some concerns about Jeff's behavior. And I'm not just talking about the financial stuff, but how he was acting towards Ashley. That whole nude selfie thing, for example, that really raised some red flags about his judgment and his ability to be a respectful co-parent.
It's true. The court really saw that as a deliberate attempt to humiliate Ashley, which is obviously not going to fly when you're trying to build a healthy co-parenting relationship.
Right, and that wasn't even an isolated incident. The trial judge had heard evidence about, well, there was a history of conflict between them, even allegations of abuse. So the Supreme Court, in upholding that initial decision, they were sending a strong message. Family violence, whatever form it takes, it has to be a major consideration in these kinds of cases.
Wow. It really makes you think sometimes the best way to protect a child is to prioritize their safety and emotional well-being, even if that means limiting their contact with one parent. It's a tough reality.
No doubt about it. It's one of those lose-lose situations where everyone's trying to figure out what's best for the kids, and it's never easy. This case just highlights how the courts are trying to grapple with these really complex situations, especially with things like family violence, recognizing that it's not always just about physical harm. Emotional abuse, trying to control the other parent, undermining their relationship with the kids, these are all forms of family violence that can have serious, long-lasting effects on children.
It's a lot to think about. It really shows you the weight of these decisions that courts have to make, especially when you're talking about protecting kids who are caught in the middle of these really difficult situations.
It really does, and it reminds us that these cases aren't just about legal arguments and technicalities. They're about real families going through some of the most challenging and emotional experiences imaginable.
So where does this leave Ashley and Jeff? I mean, this case has been going on for years, appeals, back and forth. Is this finally it, or could this end up back in court again?
Well, for now, I think the Supreme Court's decision, it gives them some closure. The relocation to Telqua, that's been decided, it's upheld, and the court's made it pretty clear how things like due diligence, maximum contact, and family violence, how those factors should be considered in these relocation cases moving forward.
But it's not exactly a fairy tale ending, is it? Ashley and Jeff still have to figure out how to make this co-parenting thing work, but with a serious distance between them. And Jeff, even though he really stepped up, got his act together, he's still left with limited access to his kids.
Yeah, that's the reality. This isn't like some legal puzzle where you get a nice, neat solution and everyone's happy. It just shows you how complicated family dynamics can be, how the choices people make, especially during a separation, they have consequences that can last for years. And at the end of the day, it's about trying to do what's best for those kids.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. What was the biggest takeaway for you, the thing that really stuck with you from this case?
You know, for me, it's the message the court sent loud and clear about how parents need to act during a separation. Yeah, the legal system, it's supposed to be fair, everyone gets their day in court and all that, but this case shows that your actions, they matter. How a parent behaves during a separation, how much they put their kids first, that has a ripple effect, and those ripples, they can last a lifetime.
It's a powerful message, and I think a lot of people listening are going to be thinking about that long after this is over. It reminds us that no matter how tough things get, even in the middle of a separation, putting those kids' needs first, that has to be the top priority. This case, with all of its ups and downs, it really highlights how important it is to create a stable, loving environment for kids, even if that means some distance. And sometimes that means the courts have to make really, really difficult decisions, looking at all sides of the story.
You said it. And while this particular case might be closed, those bigger conversations about parental relocation, about the rights of both parents, and how to make sure that kids are supported when their family's going through a separation, those conversations, they're far from over.
That's for sure. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we untangled this complex and honestly really fascinating case. Until next time, keep those legal questions coming, and we'll be back to tackle another deep dive soon.